Time now for our political roundtable, and joining us this morning, Democratic analyst Marianne Marsh and Republican analyst Jenny Buckingham. Do I say happy fall, or did you enjoy the summer? I'm not sure.
Not yet.
Okay,
Not yet.
Everyone,
we have some weeks.
Great to see you guys.
Well, let's start out with the Trump administration. Officials hinted at a federal takeover of Boston's South Station. Take a listen to this.
We need to address the cleanliness, the crime, the safety and security of the station.
This is not a game of authoritarian monopoly. This is a government with laws and a constitution that clearly shows who is in control of what. South Station is not the property of the federal government.
Now, those comments were made as a new Acela train arrived. It also comes as the Trump administration laid out plans to take over Washington's Union Station and potentially other East Coast stations. Marianne, what is your reaction to all of this?
This is Trump's play to come in the back door to get to Boston in his effort to declare martial law. He can't go in the front door like he is at Union Station and apparently going to do in Chicago. So this is his way to do it. And mopping a floor in South Station isn't a national emergency. All right, that is not the reason to do any of this. But he is going to declare a national emergency to do it. Again, to further martial law, number one. Number two, when you look at the whole situation, the Ritz-Carlton building these gleaming towers that are part of South Station. And yet when you listen to the descriptions of people who don't live here talking about it, you wouldn't know that. And last but not least, there's no legal authority to do this. As Michelle Wu referenced, South Station is not owned by the federal government. The MBTA owns and operates it.
Yeah, it's owned by the state and it runs.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, this gleaming vision of South Station as it exists now might fall from your eyes if you go into a bathroom there, first of all. Secondly, I've decided that President Trump is the human epitome of clickbait, because he says something to get people's goat and they go for it every single time.
He's going to do it.
My take is this was a national messaging day about Union Station, so the guy came here, he said the same thing. If it shines a spotlight on problems that should be addressed, that we're just learning about now in the Globe this week, about some maintenance issues that have not been addressed, and they've been cited for the private operator of South Station. We should be on those issues, and if this shines a spotlight on them, good for Boston.
Do you really believe he's not doing this? Do you really believe he's not doing martial law? Do you really believe this is his way to get to Boston? Yes, I really believe he is not doing martial law, and I think everything mostly is an overreaction. No, wrong.
Next item, indicted Sheriff Stephen Tompkins is going out on medical leave for what his lawyer says is a serious medical issue. The governor and the AG did ask him to step down. If he is granted medical leave, he would receive 20 weeks of paid leave like any employee, and then after that, he would be unpaid. This effectively suspends him from the office and ensures that he won't return until he is acquitted. Tompkins, through his lawyer, insists he is innocent. So, Jenny, let me start with you. Is this the best way that could have been handled?
So I am disappointed, as I'm sure many voters are, that the governor and the attorney general did not publicly call for his resignation, nor have they taken any really tough action against him. This is kind of a soft way to do it, kind of the minimum that they had to do given the charges against him. It doesn't restore faith in the ethics of our public safety system and our public officials.
It's the right answer because you achieve both objectives. He's removed from the job, which he could not do under these circumstances of being under investigation, indicted, and all those things, number one. Number two, due process matters, and this affords him due process. People are innocent until proven guilty. We live in a time when Donald Trump serves as judge and jury to everything and everybody, and I think it's important to show people that there is a process, and just because you're accused of something, you should summarily be removed without any of that.
Think about if this was a Trump Republican, or really any Republican that was being accused of this, what the Democrats would be saying. I think it would be a different story.
Yeah.
All right. Well, 2 Boston city councilors have asked for a hearing to change the way the city screens applicants for jobs. They cited police dash and body camera video showing the struggle between a state trooper and a now former City of Boston worker. That worker accused of using the trooper's taser during the struggle. Police found a handgun converted into a machine gun in his car, and they also brought up the councilors a level 3 sex offender who was also on the city's payroll. Marianne, does more screening need to happen here?
Okay, that's when you fire somebody, which is what happened to that guy. He's now been fired by the City of Boston. You didn't need too much to know what happened there. That's the right way to do it. In this case, I think the City of Boston has to examine every hiring policy, every person who works to implement it and the entire process at this point. There have been enough examples where whether these policies were made before Michelle Wu came into office, maybe some of them are hers, we don't know. But I think a clear look at everything right now is warranted.
I haven't heard Mayor Wu call for that. I hope she does. I think
She
did she?
Yeah, it's underway,
That's
the
really good.
investigation.
The two counselors are doing the right thing, and this seems perfectly reasonable.
Next item, the Food and Drug Administration has approved updated COVID-19 vaccines for seniors, but only for younger adults and children with at least one underlying health problem. So it means healthy adults could have to fork over as much as $150 if the latest vaccines are not covered by insurance. COVID vaccines were celebrated as a major achievement, as you know, during the first Trump administration. So, Ginny, why the changes here during the second Trump administration?
I think there's just such a huge distrust of our institutions, particularly institutions that led during the COVID pandemic. However, this is not how you restore trust in institutions, by firing someone that just got Senate confirmation because she is rightly saying, I think, wait a second, this doesn't sit right. It's a real mess. I hope Robert Kennedy Jr. is one of the first cabinet secretaries to retire.
Ginny? Marianne?
Trump has a different agenda this time than the first time he was in office. And his agenda is to destroy the United States of America and everybody who lives in it, which is why he's dismantling our democracy, why he's tanking the economy. And when you look at Robert Kennedy and what he's doing, he's trying to physically harm the people who live here by denying them health care, Medicaid, Medicare, making things like vaccines either you can't get them because he's now regulated it in a way that you can't, or you can't afford to get them.
Right.
And so when you look at all of that, through that prism, you start to understand what Donald Trump is doing. And last point, this is the anniversary of Ted Kennedy's passing, and Robert Kennedy single-handedly is dismantling everything Ted Kennedy did over decades to provide health care to people in this country, and that is shameful.
It is worth mentioning a footnote here that Massachusetts has been working on efforts to ensure that vaccines are covered, but that plan still has not been unveiled.
Right.
We're still hearing about that.
We continue on the record. Stay with us.